talking about the mixing of human genes with food and vegetables. I don't really think it's the first time they've done it with the veggies and so on, and probably the rice as well, or even with the fish that get churned out now in these farms, because I watched a program years ago where the Canadian government had funded a project, and they were introducing new DNA into fish, and it's so simple to do. They just held the fish up, coming down a trough one at a time, very quick, a few seconds each, and just touched them. It was the end of a pen thing, which injected into it some DNA attached with E. coli. E. coli takes it deep inside, and once just like you, as your cells die off and are replaced, this new DNA replaces the ones that die off, and eventually the fish becomes a complete different, and it's owned, of course, the guys own the patent, the DNA. So that kind of puts you off their farmed fish. Anyway, it's the same thing with all your crops. Now, you don't bring big biotech companies into making your food that worked and have a tradition of being part of the big military industrial complex like Monsanto. You don't bring in thousands of scientists that are generally making things to kill you into making things because they like you, like food, for instance, which is awfully essential to living. If you haven't thought about it much, you should do some thinking about that. But it says it's the first GM food crop containing human genes set to be approved for commercial production. Laboratory-created rice produces some of the human proteins found in breast milk and saliva. Well, that's awfully appetizing, isn't it? It says its U.S. developers say they could be used. They always do this. It's like wanting to give you brain chips. Well, we're trying to help quadriplegics, like the DARPA said a couple of years ago. That's what DARPA's there for. The big military boys are there to help paraplegics. No, I don't think so. They always use that rubbish. So it could be used. It could be used to treat anything, but used to treat children with diarrhea, a major killer in the third world. So if they survive, they'll be salivating as though they're on antipsychotic medication, I guess, and growing breasts. It says the rice is a major step in so-called Frankenstein foods, the first mingling of human origin genes and those from plants, but the U.S. Department of Agriculture has already signaled it plans to allow commercial cultivation. So in other words, the boys who are put in there by Monsanto, because they own the FDA and everything, as they're boys who all work for Monsanto. They'll do a few years in the U.S. departments, then they go back to Monsanto. Anyway, so it's a done deal. The rice's producers, California-based Ventria Bioscience, have been given preliminary approval to grow it on more than 3,000 acres in Kansas. The company plans to harvest the proteins and use them in drinks, desserts, yogurts, and muesli bars. It says it's provoked horror among some GM critics and consumer groups on both sides of the Atlantic. GeneWatch UK, which monitors new GM foods, described it as very disturbing, and researcher Becky Price warned there are huge health risks and people should rightly be concerned about this. But this is the agenda, folks. As I say, Russell talked about this kind of stuff back in the 1930s and 40s. And what's amazing too is you can put articles like this out, and then they say, Friends of the Earth campaigner Claire Oxborough said, using food crops in fields as glorified drug factories is a very worrying development. Friends of the Earth are the most radical group for massive depopulation. But they get them snuck in this article here just to give you a different opinion. And another article on it too, I'll put this up tonight as well. It says it goes into the same story basically, and gives a little bit more detail about it. And it talks about the first biotech crops commercialized in 96. Biotech crops are now being grown in 18 countries. That's why you've all got ulcers and cancers of the colon, just like all the animals that tested this stuff on first got. If you didn't understand why cancers are skyrocketing, maybe you'll put two and two together, hopefully. It says, today the United States is a leader in producing biotech crops with $27.5 billion in value in 2003-4 from growing biotech-enhanced soybeans, corn, cotton, canola, and a lot of other stuff now. A lot of other stuff, and all the other kinds of vegetables as well. So unless you grow your own, really, or someone who does grow their own, it's not good news. And corn, everything, it's just on and on and on it goes. If you want to conquer the world, you just follow, as I say, the agenda prescribed by Bertrand Russell and the big boys and the Huxleys, who talked about, especially Julian Huxley, about massive depopulation, etc., People who are given a completely different education and a different reality altogether than any of you would ever suspect. And they're part of a superclass, of course, very old superclass in the family.